So this is a really good question, and it's a very important question to answer. A lot of times these two terms are used interchangeably. However, that's not really correct. These terms are different from each other, and while both of them may be applicable to a species, that's not always the case. So in order to answer this question, I'm going to take a look at their definitions and then provide some examples to really clarify these two terms. So first, let's start with an exotic species. An exotic species is a species that is not native to the area where it is currently found. And of course, you have to take into account location here. As an example, let's say I buy an aquarium fish that's native to Asia. It's naturally found in Asia, but now I'm keeping it in my fish tank here in the United States. That is a non-native or exotic species. An invasive species is very similar to an exotic species, but there's a really critical difference, and see if you can catch it when I read this definition. This is from NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and they define an invasive species, quote, as an organism that causes ecological or economic harm in a new environment where it is not native. So you can kind of think of an invasive species as a certain type of exotic species. Just because a species is non-native doesn't necessarily mean that it will cause ecological or economic harm. So for example, let's go back to my fish tank example that I provided. Let's say I buy those fish from Asia or South America where they're not native to where I currently live in Louisiana, and I just keep them in the fish tank and I just keep them there and they're not really doing anything. In that case, they're not really causing any ecological or economic harm. And in that case, they would be considered exotic or non-native species. Now, if I were to take those fish and I were to release them into a local stream or swamp, there they could outcompete native fish, they could cause declines in water quality, and in that case, those fish would likely be considered invasive because now they're causing ecological damage, or if they are causing economic damage, it would also fall under the invasive species definition. And so that's really the distinction between exotic and invasive species is damage being caused in an ecological or an economic sense. So now let's take a look at some examples of different organisms and classify them accordingly. So let's say that I buy some produce plants that are sterile and I keep them on my back patio just to help provide me with some extra fruits and vegetables. In that case, they're not reproducing, they're not becoming established in the environment, and they're not, going out and out competing native plants. In this case, they would be considered exotic species. Now, let's go take a look at an actual invasive species that I have right outside of my house. So this tree right here is called a Chinese tallow tree, or Triatica sebifera. It is not native to the United States, it is native to Asia, and it outcompetes native plants here, like this box elder maple, and it just wreaks havoc on native forest. And therefore, this would be classified as an invasive exotic species. Not all exotic species are considered invasive, however, many of them are. So why does that happen? Well, you see, when a species is introduced to an area that is not native to, many times that landscape, which has evolved without that species' presence, doesn't have the proper ecological control mechanisms to control the population of this new species. For example, the landscape could lack predators that have evolved to eat that species, or that species may just be really, really good at outcompeting native species in the region. Invasive species cause massive amounts of damage to the environment and the economy. So if you're a fish keeper, for instance, please don't release your fish into local waters. They may not be native to the area, and they can cause a wide variety of issues to the local environment. So thank you again so much for the question. I hope I was able to clear it up just a little bit, and just stay tuned for more.